Since it opened in 1963, the U.S. Navy Museum has inspired and informed hundreds of thousands of visitors who have learned of naval exploits during the ages of sail and steam. With exhibits covering the Navy's history from the American Revolution through World War II, the U.S. Navy Museum has already educated young and old about the critical role sea power has played in the emergence of this nation as a global superpower. But it is equally important that we honor the services and sacrifice of those generations of sailors who served, fought, and died from the post-World War II beginning of the Cold War through the downfall of the Soviet Union almost 50 years later. The Navy plans to recognize these brave Americans through the addition of a new gallery at the U.S. Navy Museum in the Washington Navy Yard, entitled The Navy in the Cold War, Korea, Vietnam, and the Soviet Confrontation. In order to finance this new gallery, the Navy has turned to the Navy Historical Foundation, long a partner in teaching and emphasizing honor, courage, and commitment to all sailors and Americans.
The Cold War was one of the longest wars in the history of the United States, 1946 to 1989. And so many people were involved on a day-to-day basis, it was hard for them to step back from what they were doing and realize that there was a war going on and a story that had to be told. We have a great opportunity to tell that story now because we have some recently acquired space near the Navy Museum, some 20,000 feet, where we can place artifacts, we can have personal experiences told, we can do whatever is necessary to acquaint this generation and future generations with the story of the Cold War. The veterans are getting older, and we want to get their stories and get them displayed before they pass from the scene, because it's important that we learn our history in order that succeeding generations will profit from those lessons of history, and maybe we won't have to go through the same thing again. When we get the museum up and running, we'll have various artifacts. One artifact that comes to mind are control stations from the submarines that were on patrol under the Atlantic and the Pacific. We'll have scenes of aircraft on patrol over the ocean looking for Soviet submarines, both the Atlantic and the Pacific. We'll have scenes from the hot wars, Korea and Vietnam, where surface ships had to work very hard at supporting troops ashore, and in some cases inserting troops in hostile areas, sometimes evacuating troops. We'll show stories of families who've been separated because their husbands have been off in the Cold War. We'll have oral histories where people who have actually been there will tell their story about what they did in the Cold War. And we'll cover all aspects of the Navy. We'll cover submarines, surface ships, aviation, SEALs, construction battalions, hospitalmen, everything the Navy is made up of and everything that engaged in the Cold War. We'll talk about equipment, we'll talk about airplanes and ships and so forth, but it was the people and the training of the people and the dedication of the people, the innovation exhibited by people of all sorts, from the most junior sailor to the topmost admiral in the Navy. What we ask you to do is to consider the message of this DVD. Consider also the special edition of Pull Together, which we've distributed with the DVD, and then make a contribution. We need your help. The Cold War Gallery will tell an important story. It will honor our Cold War veterans. It will stress the importance of sea power. It will educate today's sailors by instilling pride and appreciation of their heritage. And it will inspire young people to consider serving in the Navy. It will educate all Americans, especially young Americans. The Navy's in full support of this. Other institutions are in full support, but we need your support because we need to tell this important story. We need to inspire future sailors. We need to have all Americans know the story of their Navy in the Cold War.